Has any part of what happened with Stefan Molyneux and you're thinking about it and reviewing it, how do you compare that to the world of Bitcoin? Because again, the reason I care is I believe in Bitcoin like yourself. I think it's a great technology and a great tool for people, especially in the current climate. I do consider how we tell the story of Bitcoin to people, how we convince people or help them understand the benefits of Bitcoin, specifically those who may be more moderate on the left, because I think the right and the libertarians kind of get Bitcoin a little bit easier. And so rather than reject them and just tell them their ideas are idiotic, I'm much more interested in thinking how we communicate it to them. But that's a challenge. That really is like a big challenge and something I think about a lot. Mm-hmm. Do you layer on your experiences onto Bitcoin and recognize any faults or mistakes or concerns within the Bitcoin community?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, to me, the concern, I have different concerns now than I had a few years ago. Like in 2015, 16, I was worried about personality cults, not necessarily in Bitcoin, but more in the altcoin space. And I think we've seen, Cardano and Ethereum, I think to a large extent is a personality cult. And that to me is, because of my background with this stuff and because I know how destructive it can be to I think just in general in life, like the most painful things is to let go of your illusions. Like that is one of the most painful things. And so if people get really caught up in one of those altcoin personality cults, it's going to be really painful once the downfall happens. And so that's part of why I've been always so vocal to be critical, of these kind of things. And then as time progresses, I think Bitcoin is winning, and I think Bitcoin is going mainstream. And as that happens, I think there are certain people feel like they may lose their edge, right? You used to be kind of on the cutting edge if you're a Bitcoiner. Well, if 1 billion people use Bitcoin or 5 billion, it's like an internet user. You're just an internet user. Whereas in the 90s, you were part of a little club, exclusive club. And so my worry now is that we'll see splinters. We'll see people that feel the need to have a tribe, and so they will maybe incorporate Bitcoin in whatever their ideology might be. And I just worry because it's just destructive. It's reminds me, or I've done work on the Reformation, and so looking back, to me, the essence of the Protestant Reformation was we had a technological revolution. We had, printing press was one of the main things there, printing press, and that allowed people to push for religious freedom, which was radically new. Like, we don't need a monopoly on religion. People can just follow their own, passions and interests, and it's a personal thing. And so that was the push initially. It's like breaking the monopoly of the Catholic Church. But then if you look at what happened, all these crazy cults started emerging. And that's what we associate today with Protestantism. Like, literally, originally it was protesting the Catholic Church. That's what united people. But then as almost everyone started doing that, some people were like, and I would include Luther in that and some other very famous figures, they created their own cults. And I feel like the ideal of the Protestant Reformation, even though it started in Europe, was most perfectly achieved in the US, where you have that religious freedom, and then gradually it came back to Europe. So that's kind of what I think could happen, and as Bitcoin goes more mainstream, that we just that in a way, and I guess I feel compassion too. Like, society can't move faster than what it's ready to move towards. So this Bitcoin nirvana that we dream of might take multiple generations to actually, materialize. It might be, we might have some weird times when people are like Bitcoin initiation rituals. I don't know what we could expect, but that's one of the things that I try to, and I think that's what you try to do too, is hey, no, you don't need to eat, meat to be a Bitcoiner. You don't need to do all these arbitrary things to be part of the club. It's just a technology,
So you say you worry about it happening in the future, but I see it happening now, and we were out yesterday talking about this. When somebody who isn't a Bitcoiner can come into the community, have a question, and groups of people can dogpile in, call them an idiot, meme them, insult them, and I think that pushes them away. Someone who doesn't do that is Michael Saylor. He's brilliant.
Yeah.
Every time he replies is with a very considered, intelligent explanation, but that's lost amongst people dogpiling in. And by the way, I'm a hypocrite. I've done it. I try not to, but I do worry that actually that holds Bitcoin back. I worry as from people externally looking in. Do we look like a cult? I mean, we make a joke about it. Some people even say, "I'm in the Bitcoin cult, and I'm glad." But I do worry we look like a cult.
I don't think it's that uniform. Like, I mean, first of all, on the one, like, I really, because I feel like I've been through it with everyone else. You know, if you've lived through several Bitcoin cycles, you have battle scars. If you believe in fundamental analysis and long-term thinking and like sound engineering, you feel the battle scars of all the attacks that have happened against Bitcoin. And so I really, really, really sympathize with the cause, like kind of like the motivation of where some of these people are coming from. Like, hey, like another person who is justifying shitcoinism or whatever. Like I get that there's an element to that. There's just like an immune system response, and that there's a healthy,
I think that's healthy,
right? And so, but then there's a gray zone where it's like, whoa, does that justify abuse? You know, it's kind of like just a few days ago we had Will Smith's like slapping this Chris Rock, this comedian at the Oscars, and it's like, yeah, you can sympathize where Will Smith may be coming from. Like, you know, he had horrible violence growing up in his family, and maybe he has some marital troubles and whatever. You can like sympathize, but it's still wrong what he did. And so I feel the same way about people piling in online with all kinds of abuse. It's like, well, I sympathize where you're coming from, but that doesn't justify hazing someone, or, you know, whatever you call it, bullying someone.
Well, that's the shame of social media. I remember, well, MySpace was my first one.
Oh yeah.
But that wasn't really social media. I just would go on band pages and listen to their music. But Facebook was really the first social media tool I used.
Yeah.
And it was great fun. It was great fun to begin with. You would go out, someone would post some pictures, you'd laugh about what happened the night before, you would throw a sheep at each other, you would have fun. It was great. And then I remember Twitter coming along and thinking, no one's going to use this because you don't know these people. You don't care what they say. So I didn't really use it to begin with. I kind of stuck with Facebook. And then what happened was Facebook got boring and Twitter became useful. But now Twitter has got to this point where it is just a big, giant argument, a big, giant fight.
And didn't people also like really go out of their way to hurt you like recently? Yeah,
I mean, that happens, but that's happened the whole way. And you know, I'm not completely without blame. I control and I can take the mick. And yes, there's abuse that comes in. I mean, there was one particular thing that's happened a couple of times, just the insulting my dead mother.
Yeah.
Actually, it was to my sister. Some guy said, I'm glad everyone's glad she died. Actually, those are the ones, like it's just another reason to just say I don't care about Twitter. But also they are the ones that affect me the least, surprisingly, because this is just some random guy who's obviously mentally deranged and, you know, hurting himself in some way that he feels it's okay to say that to somebody. So that doesn't bother me the most in the end. The stuff I dislike the most is where some people who should know better, they lie about your intentions.
Yeah.
And it's, I
think that ribs me the most too. That gets under my skin, where someone who has built up a certain credibility for themselves and still but still they're like insidious and insinuating that they're basically superior, morally superior. And to me, what gets me the most is this, like, that other people don't see what's going on, right?
Well,
like
they're in the subcult.
Well, yeah, right. I mean, yeah, this person is kind of a mini cult leader, and then their followers are like, yeah, you know, that is what gets me, you know, the most. Where it's like, all right, I'm gonna take a break, or, ugh.
Well, I've taken the break. It's made my life immeasurably better over the last week or so. But I took the main reason I took the break is I was being a dick myself. Some guy was making a comment, and the way I questioned him is not the way I would have done it in person.
Yeah.
Where I would have said,
yeah.
listen, can you explain this to me? I really don't understand why you're doing this. Instead, I was like, it was a bit of sarcastic quip, and then he came back to me and I said, you know what? You've just given me a good reason to quit Twitter. And so it was mainly self-reflection
Yeah.
of my own behavior, but I can layer in loads of, I can give you 20 reasons to quit Twitter. In the end, it just doesn't serve a purpose for me anymore. But I also feel like it's one of those things that, what was it Amber said to me one time? Everything's a weapon if you point it in the right way. And I feel like people have weaponized Twitter against each other. And I'm just like, I don't need this. This isn't helpful.
Yeah.
So I still see it as a useful tool for a number of reasons. But I do feel like, I do feel like with these social tools, we've lost civility and the ability to have a proper discussion. And it's gamed in a way where it's fight, fight, fight. And I'm just done with that.
Yeah. And I mean, also, it like the power that it has to like kind of it can like play your emotions like a piano. You know, you're like scrolling through the feed and like you're seeing all this stuff. And I mean now, especially with the wars and stuff, like so, it's like you're bombarded with all these impressions, and the responses are often even on your own tweets. Like if I look at the responses, like I know people just did it in like 10 seconds. Like not everyone, but you know, a lot of people just, which is understandable. It's so easy. And part of how Twitter thrives is on the engagement. It's like, oh yeah, if you're like a little bit sarcastic, then you know you got a thing going.
It also elevates people into a position they're not ready to handle. You got to think 5 years ago, too, I didn't have a podcast. I was just a guy with a regular job. I do a podcast. And I've got 500,000 followers. I'm not prepared for that, what that means or how to handle it.
Yeah.
How I use that responsibly. I'm just not prepared. And I recognize that now. I recognize that I can say things that if I get things wrong, there's a negative impact. And I don't know how you prepare for that, but it's similar. I mean, it might even be someone who's got 10,000 followers and they're a troll and they spark that, you know, the people who follow them to attack someone with them. And I just don't think people fully, you know, can understand the impact that they can have on other people.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, I guess it's just like, it's funny how in the Bitcoin world, we're always talking about like lower your time preference and like think about the long run and like, you know, hodl and all that stuff. And yet we're all engaging, not all, but like, cause I know there's lots of Bitcoiners who don't do social media.
Yep.
But you know, we're all engaging in this super short time preference platform where it's just like and so there's kind of like an irony. There's kind of an irony in there, and I'm guilty of it very much. Not guilty. I don't think it's bad, but it's like I'm aware of the challenge. I feel like my challenge is to kind of like lower my time preference more so that I can give Twitter a more like, you know, kind of like, okay, I like you. Here's your room. Like this is, you know, I'm going to visit the room every now and then, but it's not like sitting on my shoulder, following me everywhere. Like I don't want that. Like I want it to be something like a tool for me rather than something that like rules my life.